We're going. Yep. Hey, it's Ron at radiologictechnologist.com. I see another question. Saw another question today or this morning that I see a lot, and I thought I'd answer real quick. And it revolves around how saturated is the radiology field. For my obscene profit timeout, as Rush Limbaugh would say, don't forget your Zip Fizz, full of vitamin C. I'll have an Amazon link below. Affiliate fees are microscopic at this point, but still help us out nonetheless. Vitamin C, of course, is a good immune system booster during this COVID-19 pandemic. How saturated is the field? It's interesting if you look at the internet and you start trying to Google that question. There's an old forum from a long time ago that comes up that says, in all caps, it says, don't go into radiography. And it's a bunch of whiners on there complaining about how hard it is to find a job, and a lot of it's from like 10 years ago. But of course, Google can't figure that out, and they still put it at the top of those search engine rankings. The fact is, it depends on a lot of things. It depends on where you're at, what part of the country, how big of a town, what are your skills, how marketable are you, do you know your stuff, how well did you do to your clinical rotations. So let's just start from the beginning. When I went to school for Xray, which was 2003 to 2005 in the Phoenix market, there were, if I remember right, about 7 Xray schools, which is a lot. Why was there 7? Because there was high demand. A lot of people were looking to get into radiography, and so, you know, the market of supply and demand, whenever people want something and are willing to pay for it, you get more people selling it. But what happens in the long run, well, first, the market gets flooded with too many techs and people have a hard time finding a job. There's a caveat to that, but you can say they had a hard time finding a job, but that resolves itself within a couple of years because as the market floods, less people want to go, and the schools start to lose enrollment and they start to close. And that certainly happened in the Phoenix market. We had Pima Medical Institute, we had one at Gateway Community College, Central Arizona College out in Apache Junction had one. There was Bryman, which I think became Carrington, or maybe that was Apollo. There was just a whole bunch of Xray schools. And that was in the basic Phoenix metropolitan. There were still schools in other parts of the state too. But you got to remember, when it comes to general Xray, there's a large need for radiographers in a hospital, as opposed to MRI or radiation therapy or nuclear medicine. The general X-ray department has the most employees in the imaging department. And that's something I often remind people that want to do radiation therapy. It's a great field, great career, and I don't discourage anybody from going, but just know that any particular hospital or cancer institute only needs a handful of them. Whereas an X-ray department in a big hospital is going to need 30, 40, 50 X-ray techs. So there's always going to be a need for X-ray. Always, always, always. And with the coming, I just about call it a crisis, the coming crisis of the baby boomer generation moving into that part of their life cycle where they're going to be hospitalized a lot. They're going to overwhelm the hospital systems, and the amount of radiography students coming out in comparison to how much volume those boomers are going to bring is going to just crush the departments. So I've been advocating that we need more radiographers in the coming decade. The last study I was involved in here in Idaho said that in the next 10 years we were going to see a 40% increase in volumes due to the baby boomers hitting the healthcare scene, so to speak. So is the market saturated? No, we don't have enough techs as it is. And back in the cycles where you had a lot of schools and there were more techs to choose from, you still had shortages in the outlying towns. You were only saturated in the big cities. And so people in New York or Dallas or Chicago or Orlando San Diego, all those highly populated places, of course, are going to have more people crammed in them, which means more radiographers graduating, and they're going to have a harder time finding a job. But when you do your clinical rotation, that's one big job interview. So if you do a good job and impress your clinical sites when you're doing, because that's 2 years you're basically working for free on your clinical rotations, you do a good job, why wouldn't that hospital want to hire you? They just spent 2 years training you. So of course they would want to hire you if you did a good job. If you don't do a good job, they're not going to want you. So it's very important that you do a good job in your clinical rotations. And if you can rotate around to other facilities, that's even better, because then you kind of cast a bigger net, so to speak, on potential future jobs. When I rotated, I only went to 2 different hospitals. But nowadays you can go to orthopedic clinics, outpatient imaging centers, several different rotations, different hospitals that are in different systems can be a part. In Southern Idaho, for the community college there that offers a radiography program, they don't just go to one hospital system, they go to multiple. And so, you know, if you can get into a radiography program and you do a good job at your clinical site, you should be able to land a job. I can't think of anybody. I know one guy that went through in the last 5 years who couldn't get hired on locally, and so he moved and got hired on 3 hours away. So you know, that's another thing that's really hard for people when they're stuck in this kind of self-centered me mode of I can't do it, but yet they're not willing to relocate or look out a little bit further, or drive a little bit further, or take 2 PRN jobs, part-time, until somebody opens up a full-time and move into that. You know, they just start complaining, I can't find a full-time job. Well, you can't always find a full-time job exactly where you want it. So when I graduated, I couldn't have gotten in full-time at the biggest hospital in my area, because the way they structure their hiring hierarchy is they'll bring a new person on PRN, which means, you know, as needed is what it means, but you're not even a part-time tech. You're somebody that gets called in when they need you. And that's how they structure it, is if a full-time position comes open, the first people in line are people that are already employees that are part-time. I mean, really, the full-time people are first. So if a coveted 8 to 5 day shift comes open and a night shift person that's full-time has been dying to get off night shift, they get first dibs to go to the day shift, and the night shift position opens. Then the next tier of people that are on the list would be your part-time staffed employees. They get to move into the next full-time shift once all the full-timers have moved around. And then after the part-timers move up and create that part-time gap, that's where your PRN techs come in. So you kind of got to understand the market a little bit to fully understand how it works. And you can find all that out during your rotations. You can find out, do they hire techs into full-time spots right away? Is there a need for it? I think there's something to be said about traveling techs these days. Back in the day, it was something you did if you didn't really want to stay permanent anywhere. And it was kind of more for seasoned techs, because you had to be able to walk into an imaging department and kind of know your stuff, and know different equipment, and be intelligent enough to speak to what you're doing, where a new grad would be a little uncomfortable with that kind of stuff. But nowadays, there's a lot of companies, a lot of hospitals that aren't looking for permanent staff. They're just looking for somebody for the next year until they figure out what they're going to do. Are they going to grow the radiography department in CT, or are they going to add an MRI, or are they going to add a nuke med? So traveling is fitting the newest generation really well, because you can see the country. You can choose where you go. You can choose when you go. You can choose a 13-week contract or a 6-month, 1 year. You can take 6 months off if you can afford to do that. I just had a traveler here working with me. He loved it. Pays really well. Pays way higher than if you were staff. And he decided to take, he takes Christmas and the few weeks around that off, or a month off, whatever he wants, and then he'll go pick up another contract. I talked in another video about a traveling echo tech that I knew, because traveling pays your room and board. So if you're traveling in your own RV, which you can plug in the parking lot of the hospital and use their electricity, the room and board payment or stipend that you get from the travel agency pays your RV payment. And then they still give you a meal stipend. And then they still pay you your hourly, which is really high. So is the market saturated? No, unless you're in a very specific area that's super dense, super populated, which is everything in that area. It's hard to get restaurant reservations. It's hard to hail a cab. It's hard to everything because there's too many people in that one small little area. So if you want to be a radiographer and you live in New York City, you're going to have to make some good contacts during your clinical rotations. You know, you're going to have to be marketable. You can't be middle of the road and you know, kind of ho-hum about the whole thing. But if you'll think outside the box a little bit and look around and not be so stuck on, you know, one place. Jim Rohn used to say, if you're not happy where you're at, move. You're not a tree. And I agree with that. So I hope that answers the question about how saturated is the market. And of course, that'll ebb and flow. Schools will come back in, you know, trying to grab the market when it looks popular, and then they'll what they do is they stop a program for a while and maybe pick up veterinarian tech or massage therapist or whatever the other programs are at that technical school. But it usually comes back, and radiography is not going anywhere. And artificial intelligence isn't going to take our job. It's going to make our images look better, but it's not going to take the place. You know, I'm laughing right now. We're in this COVID thing, and administrators are always, you know, how can we get by with less? And this time it was, can you let the nurse take the X-ray in the room with your equipment so that you don't have to wear PPE? Only the nurse does. Sure, I'll let you give that a shot. Go. So we're at the door and we're swinging the tube around, sticking it in the room, and the nurses actually, you know, you can get an AP chest. It's not that hard. But God forbid somebody asked for a lateral, and we did. We had a guy ask for a 2-view, and we said, "Are you sure?" And he said, "Well, I'd really like one." And I thought, you know, let these nurses see what it's like to try to get a good X-ray. And she's up there cranking on it, trying to get that, you know, that lateral view, and tried a couple times, massively rotated, tried explaining it, tried moving it from, you know, outside the room, moving the portables, trying to help her out, and they don't get it. And this one was frustrated, and she got it. That's not her job. It's not what she does. It's not what she's trained to do. And that's why our job is secure, because we go through a lot of training to understand how to get these views. And there's nobody else that can do what we do. And so, anyway, that's my rant about how saturated the market's not. If you want to do it, do it. Go to school. None of it's saturated. Sonography needs tons of. That's the word. We needed 13 in my system last year. We were 13 sonographers short. Not enough MRI techs. Not enough CT techs. Nuke med, because you only need a couple in a big hospital. You know, maybe 4 in a big hospital, depending on what big is. But now that they've got PET helping them out, that's boosting the volume. So you're safe going into radiology as long as you do a good job. And always be willing to continue to increase your education. Go back to school, learn more, pick up an advanced modality. Anyway, I can go on and on. I love the field of radiography. I'll let you guys go. I got to get to work. I'll see you guys later.